This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Agronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 136. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Heya.
Kodra.
Hi.
And Tam.
Hello.
That's the first. That's the first time in ages that Ash has actually, instantly replied when I said that. Now I realize, all that gets edited out and no one has a clue that that's the thing that happens. But yeah, that's keeping me guessing.
That's why I do it.
So just to give a bit of a rundown of this show is Rogue One happened this week, and we're totally going to talk about it, but we are going to talk about literally everything else before we talk about Rogue One. That way, if you've not actually seen Rogue One, we're going to give you a nice, clear delineation of when to stop listening, which hopefully works well.
Or something.
Yeah. So, things that happened this week. I have mostly been playing Wipeout, and by playing Wipeout, I mean I am doing this Sparrow Racing League.
Me too.
Because about this time last year, they patched in the Sparrow Racing League, and there was a lot of heartburn over it because folks were waiting on a much bigger update at that point, and instead they got Wipeout, and I don't care because Sparrow Racing League is one of the funnest things that you can do in Destiny. This time around, it comes as part of a holiday event the last 3 weeks called The Dawning that adds an achievement book that you can complete to get stuff and a ton, not a ton, but there's a quest chain associated with it. They added a new strike scoring system, which is kind of weird, in that there are bounties and stuff that you can go into strikes and complete, and it's not just go complete this strike, but go complete this strike while, getting, so many special weapon streaks, or complete this strike with various requirements, and you get so those actually complete stuff in your logbook, but they also complete these bounties that then reward legendaries and stuff.
But it doesn't matter because I'm spending all of my time doing Sparrow Racing.
Right. That's what I was going to say is this is a thing I could be doing, and I have people that I could be running these strikes with, but no, really, every free moment this week has been spent racing Sparrows. And there are 4 tracks this year instead of just 2, which still 4 tracks is not really enough.
No, it's not a lot, but it's good for me, at least, because it's all new to me. 4 is a decent number where I feel like I can start getting a little bit of mastery over the different tracks in a reasonable amount of time. But now that I've been running them for several days straight, they're starting to get a little repetitive.
Well, and the two new tracks are the ones that include avoiding crap as you're going through an area. So, the Russian map, where
with the rotating thing.
Yeah, and the Vex map where you have the whirlwinds or whatever. I think that's also a new one. So the new maps are kind of more complicated, which is kind of cool because if you're good at avoiding those things, you can pick up a lot of time because most people aren't good at avoiding those things. The first few days I did really well, and now over the weekend, significantly better racers are deciding to do this thing.
See, I have the opposite experience. The first few days, I was terrible at it, and the first few races that I did not even finish because I had, died so many times that I was too far behind. And now, today, for the first time, I actually got first place in a race, and I was very proud of myself. And I've been, managing to be in the top 3 most of the time.
So, interesting thing about Sparrow Racing, and I'm not sure how much this plays into effect, is it counts as a Crucible map. So you're getting Crucible rewards while racing sparrows.
That sounds,
I have
in many ways, somewhat more pleasant than Crucible maps.
Yes, I have absolutely gained 20 light levels Sparrow Racing, and it has been amazing.
Because you get, like, there's a whole set of Sparrow armor that you can get. But there's also, like, all of these PvP weapons that are, well, they're not PvP weapons per se, but they're on the Crucible loot table that you have access to. So, like, a lot of really cool weapons that, unless you play Crucible a lot, you'll never see. You can get. And I've largely been using it as a way to get my light level up because, like, I am now at 295 of 400. And it is conceivable before this event is up that I will have at least one level 400 character.
Yeah, I've been chain running them when I am on. Like, I've barely done anything else in Destiny the last few days, and I've managed to get my light level up by 20, which is pretty significant for not having actually fired a weapon.
Well, and like my favorite part of this is the fact that, like, you're committed for 6 minutes, period. Like, that's it. Like, it's a 6-minute thing. And you get in and play a little bit. So, like, I'm finding myself doing it a lot when, like, I'm waiting for something else to happen. I just pop in, run a race or two.
How long are most of their PvP matches?
Usually around the 10-minute mark, 10 to 12 minutes. There's a couple modes that are 8 minutes or so. So just for sheer, this is a really efficient way to get Crucible packages. So there are rep boosters you can get from doing various things in the game, and you can pop a Crucible rep booster and then just do a lot of SRL. And you are getting way more faction with the Crucible than you would normally get. And you're also getting tons of faction with the whatever faction you decided to rep. So I've been gaining packages that way. I've been gaining packages through Crucible. And package loot is a whole other set of items that you can get. Because, like, they change the way factions work in that every time you ding past the very first faction level, you get a package. And you get to choose between armor or weapons or chroma. And I have no idea why anyone would ever choose chroma.
I mean, I guess if you were at 400 light and you didn't need anything, then you would do the cosmetic thing.
Yeah, but, like, even then, this is a game where there is a never-ending possibility of interesting rolls on weapons. So, like, I feel like you would just always pick weapon. If you don't need armor, you would always pick weapon. Because there might be something cool that you get that changes the way you play. But whatever the case, like, so you now have this way of getting a constant stream of legendary items by doing stuff in the world. Like, so doing patrols levels your Vanguard rep, doing Crucible levels Crucible rep, everything slowly levels your chosen faction. So I'm like Future War Cult, and I have so many Future War Cult packages that I've picked up. And, like, each faction has its own unique set of gear that you can get, and all of that stuff caps out at 390 light. So it will take you a really long ways into the light grind. And then there's, like, certain higher end items, like, so these limited time events like SRL, Iron Banner, Trials of Osiris, even though, like, you can't really do Trials of Osiris unless you have a fixed 3-player team. But all of those things will take you to 400 light. So, and since we all played, they made it so when you open a package or when you get a drop out in the world, it drops based on your. So it used to do
on your average current light
Yeah.
level, and so it's pretty much always going to be a potential upgrade.
Until you hit the cap for blues or the cap for purples. But still, it's like, these are always going to usually be good items because it's basing it on your score. And it used to kind of do that, but you would get a lot of horrible light level items that you're just not getting anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I've found, like, the gearing up, at least where I am, where I was, like, barely at the minimum for the expansion because you dragged me around. that pretty much every time something drops, it's an upgrade, and the more I do, the higher my light level, and things are still just as much of an upgrade every time.
Yeah, and there are certain breakpoints. So like blue items will stop giving you upgrades at 365. Now, there are ones that can drop from strikes that go a little higher than that. I think they'll go up to 385. Purple Ingrams stop upgrade, or like they're capped at 385, and then faction packages are capped at 390, and then what they consider end game items will take you to 400, or exotics will also decode all the way up to 400. So
does the Crucible step go up to 400? So like the
Yep.
SRL rewards go all the way up to 400.
They will take you all the way up to 400.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's kind of slow going, especially there are certain points where your upgrade path slows down greatly. Like once I hit 385, it's been kind of a slow slog to get to 395 where I am right now. Mostly because you're getting uneven upgrades. There are certain slots that are hard to get upgrades for, like the artifact, and those are remedied by just doing a lot of Archon's Forge, or you can apparently get artifacts all the way up to 400 by doing Court of Oryx, even though that's last expansion's content. But the real takeaway is that SRL is amazing, and it needs to always be a thing because it's amazing.
Nice.
So how long does SRL last this time? Do you know when
it
ends?
I don't know for certain, because like I've heard two different things. I've heard people say this is a 3-week long event, so week 1 is almost up and there'll be 2 more weeks. That's the dawning event. I've also heard that SRL is just permanently back as a game mode. And if that's the case, oh my god, I would be so happy, because like I love SRL.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be awesome, because I really don't like Crucible, but I like having some activity that I can do and still have a really strong reward stream. But I mean, honestly, like, it's really fun. I like it. It's a little strange because the play mode is kind of so far removed from your normal span of activities in Destiny that it's a little odd, but it feels like the reward they're so strong that it must be a limited time thing. Like if it's really a thing that's active permanently, then like I'll be super happy, because it's a ridiculously easy way to like level up my light.
So like Trials of Osiris is a similarly powerful reward stream. Iron Banner happens once a month, and it is just as powerful a reward stream, because that's why I do Iron Banner. Like, I like Iron Banner well enough, but I'm really there for the loot.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the difference, is like I don't like Crucible. I don't like doing the PvP matches, so like having a reward stream that's divorced from that makes me really happy, because like, yeah, Iron Banner is really profitable, but I like get really sick of the PvP thing after about 3 matches.
I think the ultimate scenario for me, if it's not a permanent thing, would be to bring it in a situation where you have like Iron Banner 1 week, then you have an off week, then you have an SRL week, then you have an off week, then you have an Iron Banner again.
Yeah,
so basically, like,
sweet. I'd be okay with that.
Monthly, but alternating with Iron Banner. So like at the midpoint of the month, where you don't have an Iron Banner, you've got an SRL. That's mostly been the complaint of a lot of the players, is it's the familiar thing of there's not things that they want to be doing. And the strike system was supposed to give them incentive to start doing heroic strikes. But honestly, the making heroic strikes like Nightfalls has been a massive drop in participation, to where if you're going into a heroic strike, but now you have to worry about modifiers. And heroic strikes used to be something that people would just spam for fun. Like, I'm just going to run a bunch of heroic strikes and see what happens. And people don't do that. Like, people treat them like baby Nightfalls, which means you really have to have a team to make it work. And I mean, I've done a couple randomly, but that's also a source of serious wipes. So they're supposed to be coming out with another balancing patch of sorts, so hopefully they tweak some of these things. But again, I don't know if it's going away with Dawning. I would not count on it not going away when the holiday ends, because
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be running the heck out of Sparrow Racing for as long as I can on the chance that it's gonna disappear.
well, they put in a couple of really, really amazing Crucible weapons, and I absolutely want to get some of those while it's available. Like, they put in the Ias Luna, which is basically a baby Hawk Moon. It's the exact same graphic as Hawk Moon, same basic stat package, but it's missing like the exclusive Hawk Moon perks. So it's just a legendary Hawk Moon. And I've never gotten one to drop, so I'm hoping some point during SRL I'll get one. I keep getting Hexcaster, which is this horrible bullet hose variant auto rifle. So it's super fire, like maximum rate of fire, minimum impact, but unlike some of the ones that exist with that archetype, this one has no real stability perks you can put on it, so it's not useful unless you can't like tame the recoil on it. And it's a cool looking weapon, but like I keep getting them, so they just become infusion fodder. Which I'm not complaining, because like I need to level up all of these year 2 weapons that I still like that are sitting in my bank, but I haven't messed with, because until I can get somewhere close to max light level, it's not really worth pouring much resources in them. And I just said a whole bunch of stuff that probably alienates anyone that does not play Destiny. I am maybe deep in the weeds in this game.
You know, like, I mean, I play this game and I still kind of zone out sometimes when you start really getting into talking about it, but it's okay because, like, I still have a lot of fun playing it. Like, a surprising amount of fun for a shooter game. And
like,
especially now that I can do the Sparrow Racing, I'm super, super happy.
That was the weird thing, is like there was a conversation that happened earlier in the week about how people hold controllers, and I guess I hold a controller wrong by default, or at least I hold it vastly different than Ash holds it. Because like for Sparrow Racing, I've had to shift my grip significantly.
There are 4 shoulder buttons, and if you put your index fingers on L2 and R2, it's kind of hard to hit L1 and R1.
See, I'm kind of with Belle on this. I tend to put my index finger in between R1 and R2 in like the little space there, and so if I need to, I can slide up or down and use whichever one, which is not convenient for Sparrow Racing, where you do kind of have to hold the 2 trigger down most of the time.
So like for normal play on a shooter, my fingers are large enough, like they're insanely large, that I can hold down the triggers and still hit the bumpers with the side of my hand, which is fine and dandy if you just need to quickly hit a thing and be done with it. But like SRL tends to require a finer, more controlled touch than mash said button. Like, I mean, yeah, like I can mash the punch button and it will go off. It'll be fine. But like if I'm needing to time a bump on a Sparrow just right to avoid hitting an obstacle, yeah, that's a little bit finer touch. So I've had to shift to using 2 fingers on the trigger, like index finger on the bumpers, middle finger on the trigger. But it feels like I don't have any control over the controller at that point. Like it feels so weak in my hand, like I'm about to drop it.
Yeah, I don't shift my grip on it. I just use like L3 or whatever, like pressing the analog stick.
And that's doable.
Because it also works to do the same thing for Sparrow Racing anyway.
I have trouble hitting like the L3, R3 without also grossly overcorrecting my course as a result. So I'm trying to adjust to this thing.
I don't know.
It's just really weird. Like, I think if you've always held the controller that way, it makes total sense.
My first console was the PS1, and it had the DualShock 1 at that point. So I'm used to having 4 shoulder buttons.
Well, honestly, like, Destiny was the first console FPS I ever really played with any length of time. So I think that's part of it. Like, I would play games like Spyro or Crash, and you really mostly just needed the face buttons in those.
I think Crash uses exactly one shoulder button.
Right. So, like, you would put your finger there, like, for that
Yeah.
game. And it was mostly face button. So most of the games I played on console were that way, to where, you just get by without ever hitting. And honestly, like, when I played Street Fighter, I would remap my controller so that I had light and heavy on the face and resigned medium to the bumpers, and then never pressed medium anything. Which is horrible, I
Those
know.
attacks are useful.
It'd be fine. I can get by on light and heavy. Okay, so that's probably more than enough of that for now. So I hear folks are playing some Hex.
Yeah, they released they've released it for a while, but the PvP content is in Hex. We're actually, I think, in like season 2 now.
Yep. The second chapter basically released recently.
So when you start playing, are you playing season 1 or season 2?
You're playing season 1. You're in Adventure Zone 1.
Okay.
But the Ranger class is new.
Okay.
And Mercenaries Existing is new. I haven't personally unlocked any yet.
I was about to say, I'm not sure if I'm there yet in that case.
The Mercenaries seem really interesting. Like, I mistakenly called them Planeswalkers, but...
Yeah, they don't function like Planeswalkers, and... I mean, in a way they sort of do, because they replace your character, but they don't function like Planeswalker cards.
Right. I just noticed that they, like, had interesting abilities that you could use off of them, similar to how Planeswalkers do.
Yeah, that's just sort of a thing in Hex. Like, your character has an ability of sorts.
Well, I thought it was cool in that they kind of also imposed restrictions. So, like, this is the one that you might want to use for these kinds of decks, or this is the one that you might want to use for these kinds of decks. I absolutely was finding myself gravitating to the one that was like, no elves. Can't have elves. Nope.
It's one of the orcs, right?
Yeah, it's one of the orcs.
Allegedly allied, but I guess not.
This is the point at which I'm probably going to regret never actually straightening out my account.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat where I backed it a million years ago and I played a tiny bit and then stopped, and they eventually deactivated my account.
Yeah, they didn't handle that very well when they switched companies. Cryptozoic eventually handed over the operating reins to a company whose name I don't remember right now, but...
Some German company, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Oh, so it's not being run by Cryptozoic anymore?
No. That stopped at some point. And I'm honestly a little peeved at them.
Not running the day-to-day.
Oh, you mean they aren't handling, like, data center operations or something?
Right.
Okay, but they are still, like...
Picking cards, yes.
Yes, okay.
They decided to divide the design of the game from the operation of the game.
I mean, that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, just the transition between that really was kind of not good.
And a lot of people's accounts got deactivated because they did not give sufficient warning as to, hey, if you haven't logged in like a year, your account's going to be deactivated.
Well, and I think part of the frustration is, like, Cryptozoic had their own account management system. This is a company that runs other games, so they had their own preferences for an account management system. So there was a bit of a transition between the two.
Personally, it's kind of worked out for me because, well, you can use Steam. You can log in. If you launch it through Steam, you don't even have to log in again.
Oh, that's good. Because their patcher was kind of garbage.
The patcher was kind of garbage. You can patch it through Steam now.
Like, the only thing that I had previously that I would really kind of like to have again is my Shinhari deck, because Evil Bunnies, and, like, that's all I ever wanted to play was Evil Bunnies.
They changed what you start with. You used to choose, like, a starter deck, and now you don't. Now you just get the starter decks for all 8 races automatically.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, you can have all of those cards generate battle hoppers still.
Something, all hail the Conky Bunny.
Yeah, something like that. If you want token generation, the Shinhari definitely can do that for you.
Yeah, it was a Thala deck by any other name.
So, one of the things I like about the campaign mode, though, is they do a pretty good job of switching up all of the different encounters you're gonna have. Like, a lot of because it's digital, you're doing PvE, you can have, like, characters who have you can fight on terrains that have global buffs, and you can fight enemies who have, like, specific buffs that you have to keep an eye on, and you can have to do a stupid escort quest, and this might be my least favorite escort quest ever.
How does an escort quest work in a CCG?
You escort them in your deck.
Okay.
So I had to escort 20 gnomes across a desert, and so I had to add 20 gnomes to my deck.
You don't have to add 20 gnomes to your deck.
You don't have to add 20 gnomes at once, but I didn't want to go back for a second trip.
Given, how cards work in general, I feel like a second trip might be warranted.
A second trip might be warranted. I kind of wanted to see if it was possible. Answer, yes. Stormcrows win the day.
Are pack raptors still as powerful as they used to be?
Not in PvE.
Well, in PvE, you have relatively strict rarity limitations but placed on you at first until you level up. So having only one pack raptor in your deck is not that strong.
Yeah, you needed, 4, I think?
4 is really good. 1 is not as good. That said, if you get lucky with 1, it's still hilarious. And even without its extra effect, it's still a 1/1 Swift Strike for 1. So I'm never sad to see it.
Speaking of weird mechanics, the latest Hearthstone expansion has like a Grim Guzzler brawler type mechanic where it will summon other brawlers out of your deck, and there's a weird thing that can happen to where it can actually make ones materialize out of thin air if it's played in a certain combo. And that's the weirdest thing about this expansion is like a lot of the cards just pull things out of thin air, not necessarily in your deck.
I mean, that's a common thing in Hex.
Yeah. Well, I think the Grand Conky Bunny used to do that, where it would just summon a Shinhari of a random type. Like, you get a draw.
Grand Conky Bunny is definitely a little better than token generation.
Yeah.
So I actually have a spell I'm playing as a dwarf mage. I have a spell that turns a target troop into a random artifact. Sometimes I use this on my gear smiths because I want to turn this 1/1 body into maybe I get something good.
Sometimes you get a charge bot.
Sometimes, like a charge bot is just as good as a gearsmith actually, because
That's fair.
You don't get the deploy bonus.
Right.
I have gotten just bricks. Like, this does absolutely nothing. Which got me to thinking, if this gives me absolutely nothing, this is actually much better to be used as crowd control.
Right, you don't get like a war bot or a Drew's Colossal Walker or something.
In most cases, I would be okay with those options showing up.
Because instead of something with a silly effect.
Yeah, you can face some heinous stuff in PvE.
I haven't run into too many awful things so far. There were a few surprises, like trying to cross the river was a bit of a surprise, but they do kind of warn you about that before you try to do it.
They do. I did not realize how much I needed that warning. I really needed that warning.
Did you try to cross the river the second time?
No, I did not.
That's where one of the things you need to capture is.
Wait, what? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. The second river I tried to cross and I captured something. I've not found the 5th thing I need to capture yet.
Okay.
So I've been kind of in the mood to play a card game, and ultimately that's why I was playing Hearthstone, but like Hearthstone just isn't that game for me, I don't think.
The thing about Hex is it still is Magic with all
right.
of its good points and flaws mostly.
It has gotten, in my opinion, almost a little bit more insane than Magic. Like, there are now things that I'm having a hard time evaluating.
Yeah, I think I want a Magic-like game, but I'm not sure if I actually want Magic Online. Because Magic Online is its own kind of horrible. Mostly I just don't like its interface.
Its interface is not good.
There is yet another entry to this arena recently called Eternal, which I played at PAX South and just hit Steam recently. It is, again, just Magic in digital form.
Mostly, like, I think Magic Online would do an amazing thing if they were to ever create a more Hearthstone-y type interface, and I don't mean mechanic-wise, I just mean make an interface as clean and easy to use as Hearthstone.
They tried in the, was it Magic 2015?
Well, Magic Duels?
Magic Duels.
Yeah, but that's like a gimped version of Magic on. Like it's there was a lot of stuff that you still couldn't do in that version, or at least it seemed like it was. That seemed like a weird marketing decision because it wasn't Magic Online, but it was directly competing with that same market.
It wasn't, though.
It has replaced that market.
Okay.
I mean, arguably
Except-
it isn't, because you can draft in Magic Online and play sealed events, and I think the deck building restrictions are different. Like, there are like, Magic Online is actually just playing Magic.
The thing about duels is that one of the things I really liked about Duels with the Planeswalkers that they actually dumped in, like, I want to say 2014, was they had various puzzles and interesting situations for you to get through.
Yeah, that was my favorite part of...
Like in Hex, because Hex now has these things in part of the campaign, but Magic dumped them, and I missed them.
That was one of my favorite things to play through in the numbered Magic games, or the year-numbered ones. I guess in reality, Magic Online is competing with Lackey or Apprentice or any of the unofficial clients that sprung up over the years, not necessarily competing with a Hearthstone.
Yes, but those things cost $0.
Yeah. And they'll never quite go away. But they're also super contorted to get running, especially if you want artwork.
Yes, they are. Lackey is definitely an even worse interface than Magic Online.
I think the one that I played the most was like Magic Workbench or something along those lines. I forget the name of it exactly, and back in the day, it was always Apprentice, and then you would like do your trades over like actual physical Magic trades over an IRC chat channel. That's how I got my various Jester's caps, was by having general faith in that community to trade cards with. But this conversation has been at least enough to get me to want to try and sort things out in Hex.
And
It's
fun.
fun.
Get it.
Kicked into it.
Yeah. And at least try and get it installed through Steam, because it being a Steam thing would make it way more playable than an offshoot client.
Oh, yes. I don't know if their current patcher is garbage, but their old patcher was definitely garbage. I guess either Tam or Kodra can tell me if their current patcher is still garbage.
Their current patcher is fine.
That's fair.
So I have a thing that I kind of want to plug, but it's going to have a bit of a weird setup. This week I had a very small world situation happen where there is a person that is kind of I don't want to say a personality in the Warcraft community, but like someone that is somewhat well known that I knew of, and just random occurrence on Twitter happened to notice that they were on their way to Oklahoma. And like I often do, I said, well, welcome to our state. Because like people don't go to Oklahoma. Like it's not a place that people really go to. And through a sequence of things that quickly escalated into direct messages, yeah, this person totally grew up in the same town I'm from. And this is a town of 2,500 people. And even more so, like their mom was my freshman English teacher. And growing up, I was in their house numerous times because teacher friend of my mom. So yeah, like it's this whole weird situation where like there's this connected web of people that we both know that I never would have thought. And their big thing is like they do a lot of charity events in the community. So they do a running of the gnomes for a charity, and they do a running of the trolls for a charity. And every year they do this thing that's a play off of the Ice Bucket Challenge called the Icecrown Challenge. And the idea is that you run Icecrown and you time yourself, and however long it took you, you donate that in dollars and cents. So, like, it took me 30 minutes to run it and some change, so I donated $30. And you're supposed to challenge 3 people, and I challenged Thalen and Ash and Mort from the raid, because he was watching me run it. And now Ash has already told me that he just wants to donate some money, kind of like I do with, 4-Job Fiesta.
I don't really have any interest in going back inside Icecrown. Sorry, Val.
My time was horrible because I was streaming this, and I was listening to the people on the stream, and they were like, yeah, you can totally heal Dreamwalker with a single bandage now. And that's apparently true if you're not running Heroic, but I was running Heroic 25, and I could not keep up with the damage that was ticking against her. So I wasted like a good 12 minutes trying to make that happen before I hopped in the portal and reset that. So in theory, I would have gotten out of there at least 10 minutes earlier. But it is definitely a good cause, and you should totally like check the hashtag Icecrown Challenge on Twitter. And the donation is for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And currently they have right at 700 of 3,000 raised. So, yeah, wanted to take a moment to plug that. And also, like, the weirdness of this whole situation was, like, I had seen this and I was like, I should do this because I run Icecrown weekly anyway. But now that there's a whole small world connection to the people that are running it, I kind of had to do it at that point. And I absolutely did not mean to put two of my topics in the show notes back to back, but I kind of shimmed in the Icecrown Challenge quickly. Let It Die is a weird game.
What is Let It
That's
Die?
That's an understatement.
Let It Die is a game that I think you might like, Kodra. It is this weird Neo Tokyo meets Dark Souls free-to-play game that's on the PlayStation 4 only. And so there was an event that, cataclysm type event that shook up the world, and this thing appeared in the center called the Tower of Barbs, which is this giant tower, and it is reported that if anybody gets to the top, they will find untold riches. But instead of you actually going there, you're playing a game within a game with this character called Uncle Death, which is a skateboarding Grim Reaper.
Oh, okay.
With a Mexican accent. It is really weird. So when you play the game, you're playing it on like the Death Box 64 or something like that, and you actually activate a corpse. So like the character select screen is this subway car filled with corpses hooked up to machinery, and when you choose one, they do this really super awkward jolting to life thing, and now you are that character as you try and climb the tower. And you encounter all of these people that apparently, like, when one of these corpses dies, they lose control. Like, the person that was controlling them loses access to the body, and they just go insane. And they are now things that people have to kill. So if I get to a certain point in the tower and I die, apparently my actual character that I was playing could appear in your game as something that you encounter when you go to that level.
Huh.
And you pick up weapons. Weapons have really limited durability.
So is this sort of Dark Soulsy?
Yeah, it is.
A Dark Soulsy roguelike game.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The levels themselves are roguelike in that, you get a random...
I mean, I kind of got lost and ultimately bored in Necropolis.
This is better than Necropolis was. Like,
okay.
It feels like there's more of a point to this. There's like a crafting system that you're always trying to. So you go on these runs, and the point is that you need to keep going back to the lobby, and the lobby basically lets you check in your loot. So. Okay. You put it in your bank, and then you can craft with it. You can buy stuff. You can upgrade your weapons, but there's an opportunity cost by upgrading your weapons because, like, upgrading a weapon means that it now has a level requirement. So if you die deep in the tower and you have to start over, like, anything that you had upgraded won't work for a level 1 character. And how they do the free-to-play is there is a currency that you get by logging in daily and completing quests and things like that. And I forget the name of them. It's like these rainbow-colored skulls. And you can use one of those to pay for death insurance. And they will bring you back at full health wherever you died. And they, like, I ended up having a very limited stock of them, but, like, still it was like 10 of them. So... in theory, you shouldn't be using them because ultimately you're going to run out of them, and maybe the run you're on isn't worth saving. There are mushrooms that spawn throughout this horrible, dilapidated Neo Tokyo-like thing. And I keep saying Neo Tokyo because, like, it's very anime Tokyo Has Fallen style thing going on. And the mushrooms, like there's this weird cult around the mushrooms that you encounter early on, and yeah, it's weird. And there are boom shrooms, which I made the mistake of eating, and that's a thing that blows your head off. You're supposed to throw them at people.
Whoops.
But yeah, the mushrooms like sort of provide a health regeneration, but you have to be super careful because some of the mushrooms will just straight up kill you. And all the while, you have this super charming death character that is your guide through this world. And he'll leave you messages tied to balloons to tell you things. And yeah, it is a truly weird game that I think you might actually like. Because it's like, I think it's just Dark Souls enough and just roguelike enough that it might be a potent combination that you enjoy.
Okay. Yeah.
It is better at doing those things than Necropolis was.
That's fair.
But you're going to have to get used to using some truly bizarre weapons, like an iron, like a steam iron.
Oh, okay.
Or a router, like
What now?
like a router as in like a drill type router.
Okay, that makes me less confused than what I thought you said.
Yeah, no, it's not quite a drill, but not like a saw. It's a little router bit thing.
But I thought you were talking about the piece of
No, no, but that would not shock me in this world. One of the weapons you get early on that is essentially your tutorial is a hockey stick with like a blade of some sort grafted onto it, and that is awesome. But you don't get to use it very long. But there's kind of a lengthy tutorial that you go through as the game teaches you about itself. But apparently you can absolutely fail the tutorial. Like, it is not a guaranteed on-rails tutorial, because, like, I've talked to some people that haven't made it through the tutorial yet. Because you can die, and that's the end of your tutorial, and you have to re-roll. But, like, people have already gotten the mascot in tattoo form on them, and this has only been out, like, a week or two. So I think it's definitely going to be a thing.
I will check it out.
Okay, so 7th Sea.
7th Sea. 7th Sea is a role-playing system that is not recent. Like, I believe it originally released, actually I have no idea when, but it had a second edition come out this year, and Tam talked about running a game using it, so I looked into various things involved. It's a little weird. It's heavily narrative focused as opposed to the tactical, sort of more tactical D&D style game.
Sounds like it could be a good thing.
I'd always heard it
Depends on what
compared
you're
more to
looking
the storyteller games of White Wolf than kind of anything else.
I mean, so I've played games on broad ends of the spectrum, from tactical crunch to very, very storytelling. And
It's got more crunch than Fate.
It's got more crunch than Fate.
Yes.
Like, ultimately the dice are going to matter, and unless you have completely taken those out, which I don't know if it has or not.
It has not. It actually has a dice mechanic that's unique and a little weird. Dice pool system where you roll d10s and then you make sets that add up to 10, basically. And those are your successes. They're called raises. Anything you have left over, the DM can buy off of you to get you a hero point and the DM a danger point. But setting-wise, it's definitely something I hadn't seen before. It's set in fantasy Europe, more than just like the whole fantasy medieval Europe that the Lord of the Rings settings gives you.
Okay.
It's got the actual, there's like fantasy Spain.
Yeah, it's really unsubtly fantasy Europe. To the point where when you look at the map, you're like, oh, that's just
The
like
map is Europe.
kind of blurry Europe.
Doesn't it have like pretty robust ship-to-ship combat rules?
This edition kind of doesn't.
Okay, I remember I've only ever seen this at stores, like used, and I flipped through it several times but never actually picked it up.
This is a new version. They've recently done
It was on Kickstarter this year.
Yeah,
so
there was a new Kickstarter version of this game.
But it's a shame because, like, ship-to-ship combat sounds amazing.
it still has rules for that. They're just more abstract. The result is a game that is kind of very swashbucklery. I mean, it is called 7th Sea, so it still keeps a bit of the pirate theme, but also a lot of intrigue and some other things like that.
Yeah, they have a really neat mechanic that I like a lot that is straight up, your character cannot die from anything short of a named villain. You can lose, but you can't die. and part of it encourages you to have how would you like to die in your character creation. Not so much so that you can say, oh well, this is how my character is going to die, but so that if it comes up, you know you can be satisfied with it.
Okay.
It's interesting.
Interesting.
And I think that's a really interesting thing, because it makes for situations wherein like, sure, maybe you do die. Like, maybe you do die, but it'll be satisfying. Or maybe you lose a fight, but that doesn't necessarily mean game over.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, especially if it's more narrative driven anyway, that it sort of can encourage you to do interesting things and take more risks if you know that, like, yeah, I might fail, but it's not going to mean having to roll up another character.
Yeah.
There are other mechanics that also encourage you to do interesting things. Like, you have to decide on your approach to a problem before you start rolling dice. If you decide to use an approach that is different than a previous approach you used, you may be able to roll a bonus die.
But it's kind of it's what I really like about it is that it is a game about actively making bad decisions.
Okay.
Like, it, I mean, and it says it throughout the book. It's like, look, this game is about, like, being swashbuckly and taking risks and, like, not always calculating out the best decision. Like, take an action regardless of whether or not that's a good idea. Because it's the bad choices that you take that make for the most interesting stories.
It's true. I mean, thinking back over the years of playing Dungeons and Dragons, like, the things that you remember are when people made really strange decisions and then you had to live with it.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that because it's very difficult to actually die, like, you can be severely inconvenienced in a variety of ways, but not actually die. It means that you get to live with your mistakes. You don't necessarily, it's not like, oh, well, whoops, we picked a fight we shouldn't have, and the dragon killed us all. Unless the DM does some kind of weird Deus Ex Machina to save you. It's like, no, that's built into the game rules.
Or, Gratch, you just inconvenienced your party for a while as they go on a quest to resurrect you.
Yeah, exactly. And so it means that a lot of the restrictions that come with being able to do cool things are much more dramatic. Like, there's a magic system, and oh wow, is that magic system bad ideas time.
Magic system is hilarious and awesome.
It's probably the most fun looking magic system I've ever seen. Not because partly because it lets you do lots of cool things, but this is a low-ish magic setting. It isn't like D&D summoning houses out of nowhere and instant kill spells and so on. But but it's useful magic. It's just that how you get it is sometimes questionable. There's, like, the school of magic that's literally making deals with demons, and they'll ask you to do stuff. You can get favors, and in return for the favors, they'll have you do things for them.
Yep, that sounds like bad idea time.
Also, you can get power directly from, like, the, basically Baba Yaga.
Yeah.
That is a horrible idea.
Probably a better idea than the spirits thing.
It's a slightly better idea than the spirits thing. One of my particular favorites that Ash pointed out to me is you can play a paladin, as you can in many fantasy games, but this is fantasy Europe. So what you are is a Knight of Avalon, meaning you're like a classic Arthurian legend knight. And it is important to remember where Arthurian legend knights get their power from. In this case, the Fae.
Also, seems like bad idea.
Yeah, that's also a horrible idea.
Yeah, and I'm very particular. As I mentioned to Ash when we were looking over it, I'm very particular about the use of the Fae, not elves, because there's a difference, and one of them is much less nice than the other.
This setting doesn't have nice elves.
No, this setting has classic mythological elves of the you better hope you're carrying some iron on you at all times kind of style.
Well, that was always the thing that I liked about, say, Rift when it came to their fairies, is like, no, they went with the absolute darkest possible Seelie Unseelie elves, or I mean not elves, Fae.
Yeah.
And those are the interesting ones. Like, they're never going to do anything for you just out of the goodness of their hearts. Like, it is always a bargain.
Yeah. But
And you're always going to lose said bargain.
Oh no, it's not going to be a good time. But part of what's going on with the Knights of Avalon is that you're basically imitating one of the Knights of the Round Table. I mean, it's a slightly different fiction, but to get the magic, you basically have to act as the embodiment of this Knight of the Round Table, which is really neat from a story concept to begin with. But they give you different Knights of the Round Table had different strengths and weaknesses, and this is reflected in like major and minor traits, things that you're very good at and things that you're kind of good at. And based on your major and minor traits, you get various like spells you can cast. And it amuses me greatly that for one of the stats, if that stat is your minor, one of the spells you can cast is Summon She. You call out to the nearest fae for aid, and it shows up.
Tries to make a bargain.
And tries to make a deal with you, assuming the game master doesn't spend a danger. And as long as the game master doesn't spend a danger point, it's a Seelie. If you spend a danger point, then an Unseelie answers.
Like, I'm not entirely certain either option's better.
No.
It's
I
the
mean, like,
minor traits.
That's the minor trait.
They're just different. Like,
Which is your major trait? You get a different sort of thing. You can keep the fae from getting near you.
Create a circle 10 feet in diameter centered on you that she cannot enter.
so like, how transformative is it? Like, do you also take more damage from iron?
No, you don't.
No.
Okay, so it's not the winter/summer night thing.
No,
Not
it's not
exactly.
quite. It's not quite that extreme. But the magic is also not quite that extreme either. But yeah, and so there's a lot of this kind of stuff in the game where it's like you could do some really cool stuff, and some of it seems really crazy because it's meant to be this kind of high action, dramatic narrative experience. Like dying to a bunch of random, mooks is not exciting or dramatic, but it can be an interesting story point. Choosing some really, really bad ideas to chase down, makes for an interesting story. And like maybe that gets you in trouble, but that's the whole point.
This sounds really fun.
So
It does sound very fun.
it's a really fun system. It looks like a really fun system. It looks like one that it's one that I've been watching for a while and really want to run. And I haven't decided if I'm going to adapt it into my own setting and make it, airships instead of sea ships. But frankly, I can go either way on that one because there's enough interesting stuff going on here. Anyway, there's a great little sidebar. They talk about I fail. You can just announce that you fail a roll. And if you do, you get resources that you can spend later. Resources like hero points, which are pretty impressive, let you do pretty impressive things. So like opting into failure is a thing that they do. And they also have no dodge skill, which I think is hilarious. They say, you may notice there is no dodge skill. This is intentional. We do not want any player to ever say, I dodge. Why? Because it's boring. Instead of saying, I don't want to get hit, explain how your character acts to avoid getting hit. Don't just dodge. Instead, cut the rope holding the chandelier and swing up to the roof. Jump under your enemy's blade so you're standing behind him. Kick the candelabra's hot wax into your enemy's eyes. Anyway, it looks really fun.
That sounds very fun.
It's and I mean I'm basically pulling bits from random pages because almost every bit sort of reinforces this thing that the game system is doing. And I really love when a game's mechanics dovetail nicely into the kind of game it's trying to be. Which was one of my biggest frustrations with Shadowrun. Because Shadowrun wants to be this kind of game, but it's bogged down in being hyper ultra risky and deadly all the time. And so like this is doing a thing that is more adventure-y, and sure, bad stuff might happen, but whatever, it's part of the story, as opposed to just winning all the time or dying.
So I think we've reached that point in the show where it is time to transition into Rogue One discussion.
Okay.
And mostly I want to give our listeners an opportunity to shut off the podcast if they have not watched the movie, because we've all watched the movie, so I think for the most part we're wanting to talk about it. Or at least I am, definitely. And I know Grace is, because based on commentary that she's given me in the past.
All of these words are so that you can be assured that spoilers are coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Like tune out if you don't want them.
Yeah,
Right,
we are giving you ample opportunity to take a break.
Yes.
Big go.
Yeah, big flashing lights. Spoilers are coming.
I
didn't really expect Girl from Ipanema for that one.
Yeah, no, it's like my default waiting thing. Like, I will literally hum that in the real world when I am waiting on things. I don't know why.
I tend to go for Jeopardy.
But anyway, like, I feel like this is enough of a buffer. So yeah, first of all, I have to say I am too old to do the thing that I did today.
Which was?
Got up at 7:30, got
I'm
up and around, and we were at the theater by like 8:30 in the morning, and went to
How do you even have like movie showings at 8:30 in the
I
Well,
morning?
also am curious
it was-
about that.
It was at 9:15, but they were letting people in at that time. So we watched Rogue One at 9:15, and then went to the bathroom and turned around and watched Fantastical Beasts at 12:15. So, and all the while that happened, like, ice was apparently happening while we were in the theater. So we get out and like the car is just glaze iced over. So yeah, like, that's doing the double movies in a row thing is just not something I can do anymore. But that said, I really wanted to see Rogue One, and I also wanted to see Fantastical Beasts for that matter, because it'd been a while. But yeah, this is a good movie. At least I feel it's a great movie.
I posted to this effect elsewhere, but I liked it, and I'm also glad that other people didn't. Because it means that Star Wars is becoming more than just Star Wars, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely a different thing. So I thought it was good, but I didn't actually enjoy it. And I can elaborate on that a little bit. But maybe if other people have comments first, because I feel like I'm probably in the minority here.
I did like the movie a lot. My normal criteria for things I like has swords and has magic. This movie was real light on those things. So as a result, it didn't really feel very Star Warsy.
Yes, that is a complaint I had.
Yes. I also think that it doesn't feel very Star Warsy, but I actually like that about it.
I think it was purposefully trying not to feel like the traditional Star Wars movie, like even so far as did not open with a scroll.
That was a big thing I noticed too.
Did not have the traditional Star Wars theme.
No.
Like, there were a couple moments where
the
score, the score, like, kind of alluded to it, but never quite did the full sequence of chords.
The score reminds you that it is a Star Wars story, not that it is Star Wars, and feels very carefully the movie feels very carefully constructed in a variety of ways. I have a whole thing on what I think it's doing, but I'll save it for the moment.
My wife's big complaint is that this was sold as a standalone film, and technically that's true, but no, not really. Like, this was a film that fits so neatly into the gaps left behind
between episode 3 and episode 4.
Right.
Not just that, but it's like
really between
shimmied in very tightly.
Even references Rebels.
It references Rebels. It references Clone Wars. If you haven't seen Clone Wars, Vader in it makes almost no sense.
Right.
Like, Vader feels jarring and wrong unless you've seen Clone Wars.
Well, and then Easter eggs like the Phantom showing up in one of the big battle scenes, like, would not register unless you've seen Rebels. But, like, for me, like, if the movie was nothing other than answering the question of why the hell was the Death Star built with a self-destruct switch that was so glaringly obvious. Like, that alone, like, it answered, 40 years of questioning why the hell they built it that way. Okay.
Finally answered.
Like, if the movie did nothing other than that, I would be happy with it, because, like, that's been my frustration with the narrative of A New
do
Hope.
that.
But I don't know. Like, I feel like Disney is trying to expand what Star Wars is.
And it's definitely, it feels like it's doing something that they're doing with the Marvel movies, which is some of them are just different kinds of, right? Like some of those movies are actual like action superhero movies. Some of those are kind of like spy thrillers, you know, like some of they're very different styles. And so, like, this movie does give me sort of the hope that they will be doing that with Star Wars. It's just unfortunate for me personally that this particular movie is very much a grim, unpleasant war movie that is really depressing. And so, like, one of the things that I love about Star Wars is that it's fun. And even though some really terrible shit happens in those movies, like, let's be clear, like, in the end, it's still an adventure and a fun ride. And this movie was not that for me. Like, this movie was too depressing and too grim. And there were lots of good parts. I still think it was good. And I still think it was a good movie in the Star Wars universe. But it was too dark for me to say that I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I guess for me personally, like, this movie was a lot like going to watch Titanic. Like, I knew that this would not end up well for anyone in this movie.
Yeah, but the difference is, I mean, because you brought that up, one of the things I was having a conversation about regarding this movie is that I think, and like other people totally 100% disagree with me on this, and like I understand why they did this, but if one person, if one of our heroes, if one of the characters that we were following, not necessarily the two leads, if one of the main or ancillary cast had survived, I probably would feel fairly differently about it. I would still maybe not like it as much as some other people do, but I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more.
It's ruthless.
It really is. And I mean, you sort of expect it going in. Like, I didn't have any illusions necessarily about that, but still, it was a bit of a gut punch.
It's different to expect it and another to see it, I think.
Yes.
So okay, I'm gonna go on media studies bender here. So Disney has clearly learned from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They are watching ticket sales start to drop off, and they're watching the engagement start to drop off. And it's like, sure, they're still selling millions of tickets, but they're also seeing them. They're also seeing those numbers start to fall off a little bit. And I'm largely checked out of the MCU at this point. Like, I wasn't all that into comics to begin with, although they really hooked me with Iron Man. And I don't have, decades of superhero baggage to, oh, well, my Iron Man sucks and Captain America is amazing or whatever. I don't have any of that, so it was sort of a neat way for me to get invested in it. But I've checked out of it because all those movies are the same. Like, different mythology, different trappings, but the same overall structure. You've got superpowered person in the trappings of some, particular genre, but in the end, it's superpowered person, movie around superpowered person doing superpowered things and winning. Hooray, everybody's happy. And
I think the ones in that series that stand out the most are the ones that aren't as clearly formulaic. So, like, Guardians of the Galaxy was a vastly different feeling movie than any of the other ones in the Marvel comic universe.
Yeah, but even
And-
sorry.
Oh, no, the second Captain America movie, also, I forget the name of it.
Winter Soldier. It was very dark compared to what the other movies were like at that time, and it kind of felt like the Empire Strikes Back of the Marvel universe.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one because it felt like a very different kind of movie.
And I feel like, Winter Soldier is widely considered one of the best of the MCU. Guardians of the Galaxy is way up there for the experimental thing that nobody expected to do well, but everyone, but like was widely loved. And those are the experimental ones. But it's taken them this long to get to the experiments. And for me, I'm really excited that Rogue One is this incredibly experimental movie. Like, it's way darker than Star Wars normally is. It's not telling... It doesn't have Jedi. It doesn't have swords and magic. It doesn't have... The main characters don't even have a unique ship. There's no, like, iconic ship where all the heroes fly around in. They're flying around in, like, a cargo scow. And they jump ships, like, 3 or 4 different times. Just so many of the little, like, iconic Star Wars beats are purposefully missing. And what I think is really interesting about that is, like, I like it, but I can see where there's going to be a future Star Wars movie that I don't like. And I'm kind of excited about that, because it means that Star Wars will become bigger than just the things I like. But it also means that I might end up getting to see that, like, Seven Samurai style Jedi movie that I think would be amazing, but I know like 6 other people would want to actually watch.
Yeah, I mean, I like as much as like I can't even say that I didn't like this movie. Like I still think it was good, but it was just not my thing.
Yeah.
And like it wasn't a disappointment, and I'm still excited about the next thing, because if it's going to be as different from everything else as this one was, as long as it's different in a different direction and it's not another like gritty, dark, grim, like depressing war movie, then there's a pretty good chance that I will really like the next one. So I'm kind of okay with it.
I had heard at one point, I don't know if this is still the case, that like the Solo standalone film is going to be more like a heist film.
Yeah.
And like
that's
amazing.
that's cool.
That sounds great. I want to see Lost Stars turned into the novel, turned into a romance movie.
Oh man.
And it would be amazing.
I would watch that. It would be amazing.
Yeah. And it's like, all right, I don't normally think of Star Wars as a setting where you'd set a romance movie in, but I'd watch that
but
one.
It was awful.
Let's not
okay,
even mention
speaking
that.
of romances and this movie, in my head canon, Baze Malbus and Chirrut Imwe are totally a couple.
Oh,
Yes.
Sure, yes.
What?
Donnie Yen and his friend.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah.
On the same token, Jen Erso and Captain Andor, I want to say, are not.
No.
No.
No, they're war buds.
Yeah, and I love that.
I saw a really interesting comment where it's like, it's interesting to see a movie where the emotional relationship payoff is trust rather than love.
Yes.
Right. I mean, because like at the very end, they're holding hands as they're fixing to explode, but that's more like, at least I'm not alone at the end of the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of that. So given the circles that I and a bunch of, I assume a lot of the other people here run in, it's funny watching people be like, oh, well, the CG was so obvious it detracted from the movie for me. And I find that really interesting, because we spend so much time around it that we're used to it.
So, okay, I have commentary on this because I went with my wife, who does not play games, does not spend time around CG. I immediately thought, oh, Tarkin really has some issues going on. There's some uncanny valley. My wife did not realize it was a CGI character.
I did not realize it was a CGI character.
It creeped me the heck out immediately.
I could tell, but I also looked at it. Well, the thing that got me was about 2 rows in front of us in the theater, and this is in like tech forward nerdy Seattle, where I'm sure everyone in that theater plays video games. Somebody was like, wait, I thought Peter Cushing was dead.
Yeah.
Like, we're so used to seeing it that it trips the uncanny valley for a lot of us. But other people are like utterly convinced and like stuck around during the credits to see who that actor was.
Tarkin, I was wondering about. Leia, however, got me completely. Like, I didn't realize that was also CG.
See, and that went down different than I thought. I thought at one point Carrie Fisher's daughter was involved with this property, and I thought maybe they were just modifying her appearance to look like Leia.
If you had told me that a crack team of a crack team of makeup artists had done that, I would believe you, because I know how good makeup artists are.
Well, so like the Cushing thing was noticeable to me, but like Leia looked dead on, like, but the difference there is...
But it was a shorter, it
right.
was a short scene, and there wasn't a lot of moving around. Like watching Tarkin move, it was very disconcerting to me. And aside from like the technical details of what it looked like and whether it tripped the uncanny valley or not, like I am kind of deeply uncomfortable with the thought of the continued use of this technology in this way in movies. Like, it actually creeps me out. And actually, when the movie ended, I basically sat there for several minutes just sort of trying to process, like, seeing Leia and, like, what does this mean for film? And, like, I don't really feel great about this. Like, I had a lot of really negative feelings, like, to the point where I wasn't even, like, thinking about, oh, I like this movie, or I didn't like this movie, or any of that. I was sitting there thinking about what it meant that they were using this technology this way.
This is some sort of creepy Hollywood necromancy.
Well,
yeah.
The thing that I thought worked really well, though, was blending actual footage of like Gold Leader and Red Leader from A New Hope into this film.
Oh yeah, the use of the cut stuff from the original trilogy was brilliant.
Yeah, that was cool.
I thought that was
still
really
a
cool.
little strange, but like it worked well.
It doesn't give me deep-seated concerns the way that like Peter Cushing necromancy does.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and I think the problem with Peter Cushing necromancy was Peter Cushing was a very specific actor. Like, he had unique facial expressions, he had unique mannerisms, and the computer just couldn't nail it. Like, his face moved in a specific way, and that computer did not move in that manner.
I think
it's also just like...
The thing about that is that he appeared in... He appeared and has a heavy role in Clone Wars.
Yeah.
For me, he looked too much like that version.
Yeah, I can see that.
Just purposely animated looking.
I get that
there's no way they could have cut the role, unfortunately.
He's really important to what they were doing in this movie. But I'm still with Grace, and like I'm a little concerned about the precedent set here. Like, are we gonna see a Han Solo movie where it's just, it just looks like young Harrison Ford?
I honestly might not go see that if I thought that it was going to be done in that way.
We could.
They've cast another actors for young Han Solo. That's what I would have rather them done. Is like, I don't care if Tarkin matches up 100%. Just find someone that looks vaguely like Tarkin, and I'd be happy. Like, with another actor playing Tarkin.
Are you gonna find that looks vaguely like Peter Cushing?
They had Wayne Pigram played Tarkin in the prequels, right? I mean, he was just like standing on the bridge, not doing much, but like they had another actor in that role.
Yeah, but it was still a CGI face on top of mocap action. Because like the prequels, Tarkin was super CGI from what I remember of it. Because it was like a very young Tarkin, wasn't it? Or am I misremembering
I don't
it?
think so.
I think Grace is right.
I'm pretty sure that it was recognizable as Wayne Pigram, who I just, like, I know because I liked him in other stuff.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
But yeah, I'm probably not going to go and see this 4 more times like I did with episode 7.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's dark.
It's very dark.
I am looking forward to it coming out on digital so I can watch it and then A New Hope back to back.
One of the cable channels is running A New Hope, like, right now. We did watch. But it's, I'm sure that I will end up owning the movie, and I'm sure that I will watch it again before watching Star Wars, but I didn't even, you can hear me, like, hesitating, because it's not like I didn't like it, it just wasn't any fun. And that was my problem with it.
And it wasn't, I think that I don't think that it was trying to be fun and fail.
No,
it
no,
wasn't
it
trying
wasn't
to be
trying.
fun. But like, if you're going into it expecting fun Star Wars, that's not really what you're going to get out of it.
No, and well, and it's funny because I wasn't expecting fun Star. Like from what I knew about it going into it, like I wasn't disappointed. I was pretty much expecting what I got. It's just that like what I would like out of a new Star Wars adjacent property is something a little less grim than this. But like I said, I'm really looking forward to the next ones.
Yeah.
See what else they do.
I guess maybe my tastes like tend to align to grim dark future because Lord knows I played Warhammer and loved it for a very long time and tend to love post-apocalyptic properties.
Yeah. Like,
So I think maybe like because of that pedigree, like I was totally prepared for this and I was fine with it. Like I kind of knew in the back of my head, like I was hoping that maybe one person would make it through, but I was fully prepared. Like especially when the shield went down, I'm like, yeah, they're all gonna die. They're all gonna die. But saying that, I feel like they gave everyone a good send off. No one died in a horrible and dumb way.
That is true.
Like nobody was Stormtrooper 35 randomly shot them in the back and they're just dead now. Like they were all doing something good when they went down.
I thought they were fake. They were the fake out with the captain was pretty good.
Where he fell in the tower and then
Yeah.
was back up at the end. Yeah.
And like a wreck. He was.
Yeah, he probably wasn't going to survive anyway.
No,
Like,
he wasn't.
He was
in
in
a
bad
good way,
shape.
But he made it. I mean, sort of. He made it to have the bro moment at the end, the war bro moment.
Yeah, I totally cried when Chirrut Imwe went down. Well, actually, when Baze went to go retrieve Chirrut Imwe. But like, I feel
don't
like
know what their names were because it was never really like many things in the Star Wars universe. It's never really that apparent in the movie itself. But
so Jedi dude and Boba Fetty dude.
Yeah, the Force monks, right? Like that's what
Yeah.
I've been calling them. And but they were like really some of the highlights of the entire movie for me.
The first time he fires that bowcaster or the staff bowcaster.
Yes.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
I love that representation of Force mystics, where like even their close friends are like, "You're kind of full of it. This is nonsense."
But I love that. Like I said, this is the second movie in a row they have given us a non-Jedi Force user.
Yeah.
I love that, like, because as playing the pen and paper game, like they push how common this is, where people are a little bit Force sensitive and can do stuff with it, and how rare Jedis actually are. But the movies have only ever shown us Jedis.
Yeah.
Well, or Sith, one of the two.
Dudes with lightsabers.
Yeah, and technically, like all of the little underlings, like at Darth Vader's castle, like in the expanded universe, they were all Force sensitives too. Like they were kind of acolytes. I forget what they're called. They were like maybe they're Sith acolytes or Well, the Rebels gives us the Inquisitors too. Honestly, that's my one hope is Rebels is existing in a parallel universe to this. And maybe some of these characters will overlap a little bit in the Rebels show.
Dude, your optimism is amazing. You did see the end of Clone Wars, right?
Yeah, I know.
End of Clone Wars is a kids show too. Don't forget.
Right. But like we haven't reached the battle of Scarif in Rebels yet.
No.
And they're definitely going to be there. That was the Phantom.
Oh yeah.
So there may be overlap. Like I could see maybe Force Monk and Heavy Gunner showing up in Rebels at some point, but that's it. Like Jyn has her own trajectory.
Showing up. Unless they get like a cameo scene while they're on Yavin or something.
So those two are getting a comic series though, or at least a book.
Really?
Well, that's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Which two?
Chirrut Imwe and Baze.
Great.
Nice.
Yeah,
Baze.
I don't know which it is.
Donnie and his friend.
I think they said Baze in the movie. I don't.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Baze. Like, I thought I saw that there was a comic coming out about those two.
I don't usually care about comics, but like anything with more of them would be good.
Honestly, like the modern series of Star Wars comics are well worth reading. They're really good, and it's a series of what I like the most about it is there's a lot of faulty narrator going on, but if you're reading all of the comics, you're getting a broader picture of what's happening. So, like, the Vader comic is running parallel to the Luke comic, and they interact with each other, but in the Luke comic, you see Luke's version of the facts. In the Vader comic, you see Vader's versions of the facts. And there's a character, Dr. Aphra, that appears in the Vader comics, and she's gotten her own comic, and you're going to get her side of events. So it's interesting. Like, you're getting multiple slices of the same thing if you read multiple of the comics. And I'm hoping the same group that's been doing those is going to do the ones for Rogue One, or Rogue One characters, because they're really good. The one that, like, Forrest Whitaker's character, the entire movie, I thought it was Saul, S-O-L, and it's actually S-A-W.
I didn't realize until after that is apparently a character from Clone Wars, because I've never really watched.
Yeah. I mean, they're building a really interesting and really deep universe. Probably more so than actually the expanded universe was.
I think so. For all of the wailing and gnashing of teeth that went on with the resetting of the expanded universe, I feel like what they're doing with it and like bringing it all back together and making it make sense, and
it's really like interwoven but still coherent, which the expanded universe was not.
Well, so when they brought back characters through Rebels and started cherry picking things, I was okay. Like, I'm 100% okay. So long as you cherry pick the good and let the rest fall by the wayside, I'm okay, because there was good stuff in the expanded universe. It just was outweighed by the not amazing stuff.
Emperor clones.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole bunch of dumb stuff in the EU that, like, even your like diehard Star Wars fans are like, look, we don't talk about that one. And like if you're at that point where you have to have like that many different layers of canon, it's just like, no, just nuke it, start over. I mean, the Vader's like cruel pun in Rogue One is perfectly in keeping with like end of Clone Wars Anakin. And like the Clone Wars did incredible work turning Anakin from the prequels into Darth Vader over the course of multiple seasons of TV. To the point where like when he's in a good mood, he tells like awful jokes while being cruel to people. He makes like cruel jokes, and the like dark, angry Vader you see when he's like caught failing at something. Like anytime Anakin in the Clone Wars like fails at something, you see him get like cold and angry.
Well, and this movie set up why he was that way during the, original trilogies. Like, he was so close.
Yeah.
So close and failed.
Like he's seething under that in that final scene as the Tantive gets away, because he's failing. Like when he shows up on the Tantive, he's angry and failing. It's such a great, like the weaving together those disparate things has been really, really fascinating to watch. But I know some people who hate that line from Rogue One.
I mean, yeah, it does cut, like, if you just watch the movies, it feels like it's undercutting the Vader that you know.
Yeah, it feels, exactly. Like it feels so different from the Vader of the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the thing that makes me happy, though, is this is Disney planting a flag in the ground and saying all of these Star Wars properties have equal weight.
Yes.
Just because it's an animated series doesn't make it any less canon than one of the movies.
Which is funny, because previously the EU could overwrite, other material at will. I mean, the movies could overwrite any non-movie material at will.
Right.
Yeah. And did. And it was really confusing and difficult to work with.
Back to the whole, this is a different kind of movie. I'm super excited about that because it makes me think that someday we might see a KOTOR era film. And I would love to see a KOTOR era film.
They've been surprisingly unsubtle about KOTOR references in both of the more recent films.
Bit of a surprise, and they haven't really said anything about the canonness of those games and that setting.
Yeah.
Several characters have made it through.
And, like, factions, conceptually, like...
So, okay, am I incorrect in thinking that the whole Kyber crystal thing really didn't exist until KOTOR?
Lightsaber crystals didn't have names until KOTOR, no.
Right. So Ilium and Kyber crystals and all of that stuff got ushered in with that game, far as I know.
Yep.
Didn't it get introduced in one of the RPG books before it got introduced in KOTOR?
In one of the RPG books, they talked about one type of crystal used, and also pointed out that Sith used synthetic crystals, which is why they were always all the same color. And I think I'd have to ask Bill, because I bet he knows, because he probably wrote it. I think they named one and commented that there were others, but like this was one of the more common ones used. There's a big to-do about Luke's 2 lightsabers and why they were different colors.
Well, now there's the whole canon thing where Sith lightsabers are red because they get corrupted and turn red.
What?
Yeah,
What is that from?
I don't even know, but it's a thing. Let me see if I can find a reference. But basically, like the new canon is apparently that like doing cruel and horrible things with the dark side damages the integrity of the crystal.
Oh, wow.
It's from the Ahsoka canon book.
Interesting.
Yeah, here's a in the new canon book Ahsoka, it's described that the Kyber crystals bleed when taken by the Sith.
Oh, interesting.
Since the Kyber crystals do not call out to the Sith, they have to bend the will of the Kyber crystal itself. When this happens, the crystal releases a red hue. This hue will stay red for as long as the Sith wields it.
That's a little weird.
Crystals can be saved by a Jedi, but when this happens, the Kyber crystal loses all color and becomes white.
So I guess that's how she got hers.
Yeah, that's how she got hers.
But I think like part of this that I'm liking is the fact that they're expanding out lots of different areas of the universe and not just this main central path that our, hero's journey takes place on.
And it surprised me, actually. I mean, it shouldn't have, I guess, in retrospect, but it surprised me a little bit how, I don't know, you sort of expected Rogue One to be like a really standalone, like its own separate story, but it is very much directly in line with the other movies. Like it doesn't feel like it is, it feels like a different kind of movie, but the narrative feels directly in line in between, episode 3 and episode 4.
And a whole bunch of other things. It's actually very tightly integrated.
Yeah, I mean, like you said earlier, it's like a really tight fit between episode 3 and episode 2, the Clone Wars, episode 3, Rebels, and this.
Well, and there's so many little gaps that get filled, like Red 5 dies, therefore leaving it as something that Luke can take over when he joins.
So I guess that's the interesting thing to me is like Luke revives Rogue Squadron, and like I guess I don't see
that part's not canon.
Nope.
Someone reminds me on a fairly regular basis.
Wait a second.
So Rogue Squadron is in Empire.
Yeah, Rogue Squadron's in Empire, and
that's what the Snowspeeders are.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, the Snowspeeders are Rogue Squadron, and then Wedge Antilles is the Rogue leader in the battle at Second Death Star. Those are canon. So, like, the concept of Rogue Squadron and the fact that, like, Luke is sort of takes on Rogue Squadron doesn't quite jive with the Rogue Squadron, the original mission of Rogue Squadron.
The original mission of Rogue Squadron?
Well, I mean, what we see in Rogue One.
Oh.
Well,
yeah, but when you only have one ship.
I guess the thing is, like, if you can think of this as, like, an ongoing war effort, what they did that day would be, like, held up and heralded as, like, the ultimate act that anyone could do. So I can see anyone wanting to take on that honorific.
I guess, yeah, that's why that mantle came up.
Yeah, I can sort of see, like, I can draw a pretty reasonable line between Luke Skywalker is the hero of the Death Star, is asked to found his own squadron, and, like, not really being very well connected with the Rebel Alliance, but wanting to make it feel like he is. He looks for good recent history that people remember, or possibly just has one of the other rebels be like,
well,
hey, you know what you should call yourself?
Like, military acts become legend. You know, think just in terms of our culture. Like, how many times have you seen the image of the Marines raising the flag at Iwo Jima?
Yeah.
Like, how many times, like, so many times over my lifetime have I seen that image that it just becomes a thing and not necessarily an actual sequence of actions. And I think, like, Rogue One probably went down in history as this selfless act to keep the rebellion alive. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, even start the rebellion.
Yeah, and not a bunch of people making some decisions that thrust the Rebel Alliance into a giant problem.
Right. Nobody remembers that, oh, their actions forced our hand. People remember it as this heroic beginning of the rebellion.
Yeah.
Like the proper war of the rebellion. Because the rebellion was there. It's just like, I got the impression through this movie that armed conflict wasn't a thing, really. Until they took on the base at Edau.
P.S. Talk about a much grayer Star Wars than ones I've seen before.
Well, you don't have anyone who is desperately trying to be a lightsider.
Well, even in general, the Rebel Alliance in the original trilogy doesn't do, like, awful stuff.
They never would have ordered the assassination of someone.
Yeah, like, that's a lot less black and white than I normally see, and it gives me a little bit of secret hope that we're actually going to see my favorite interpretation of Force wielders that I never thought I'd see in a Star Wars movie.
The Grey Jedi.
Yes, the KOTOR explanation.
So, I mean, Rebels brings Greysiders into the canon officially.
I know. That's why I'm so excited.
So,
yes, I'm extremely excited about this possibility.
So I do know that one of the comments our friends made, Inky, was it is almost too lighthearted for the movie that it was being. And I kind of can see that. Like, there were... If you are viewing this through the lens of, like, an actual war movie, some of the, like, comic relief was kind of jarring and weird.
look, gallows humor is a thing.
Yeah,
Like-
although I don't think this was... I don't think that it was all gallows humor.
Yeah.
No, it was not. But I'll tell you that if it wasn't there, this movie would have been unwatchable for me, because it's like the best parts of the movie for me were like the droid being
A droid.
completely hilarious.
Yeah,
and,
that droid was great.
and like the banter between the Force monk duo, right? Like, they were great.
The droid saying, "I'm with you."
Some of the
Captain Endor told me to say this.
I had to.
Some of the stuff that I've seen in, like, behind the scenes interviews and whatnot is that this was actually previously a much darker film without any of that, and that and what's this called, that it just didn't play well with test audiences, and I could
Yeah,
totally
I could
see that.
I mean, yeah, it would not have gone over super well with me. I can tell you.
I wouldn't have liked it as much.
I mean,
they
it
talked
probably
about there
still
being
would've
some
been a good
refilm,
movie.
and that's probably what they were doing, was trying to make it more palatable.
Yeah. I think that you could do a dark... I mean, I think that having been primed by Rogue One and know it, like, if I were to see, like, this is a dark Star Wars war movie, I could be prepared for it now. But if we jump straight into, like, from lighthearted Jedi to, like, super downer, humorless war movie, it would have been too jarring. But I also think there's space for that now. Like, Rogue One created a lot of space for more different kinds of Star Wars movies. I'm really excited about that, even if it isn't my favorite.
Well, for me at least, nothing will probably ever dethrone Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I mean, I think this one was darker than Empire.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
and I think mostly so the thing that like makes this work for me too is, okay, this may not be everyone's Star Wars movie, but the fact that we know we're going to start getting a yearly Star Wars movie for the most part makes it better. Like, we're not like waiting decades between films.
And knowing that, I feel like from the thing that has been worrying me is, am I going to get Star Wars fatigue? Not so much are they going to release as many movies as they possibly can, because that, I feel like, goes without saying. But like, am I going to get tired of Star Wars because there's just so much of it being crammed down my throat? And if Rogue One is an experiment in how much can we deviate, can we get people prepared for the idea that we're going to do some very, very different stuff? Like, maybe I won't get Star Wars fatigue.
Well, and that's where they've gotten with the Marvel Comics universe, is like when you're releasing a film each quarter, roughly, like that's maybe too many films a year in the same sequence.
Yeah.
But what I'm really waiting for is like us to reach a point where the animated stuff and the movies and the video games are all building out a universe that all syncs together. And that's going to be awesome, because there's a lot of tales you can tell in this universe. And it is by nature a really interesting universe full of all kinds of stuff.
I look forward to having someone gush at me over the like Star Wars medical droid drama film that they just love, and I'm like, I don't get it, but cool.
I would watch that.
I was trying to come up with like what Star Wars genre movie would I just be like?
Man, it would be amazing if we had like ER, but in a Coruscant hospital.
I mean, you could do it.
Medical droids and...
It would be weird, but you could do it.
Grey's Anatomy for Star Wars. That would be kind of amazing.
Yeah. I don't think I'd watch it, because it's not really my thing. Like, I'd probably watch a little bit of it, but...
Chopped in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
Although, like, so I thought this at first, and before it exiting my mouth, I thought it could be maybe amazing. Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous for the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
I don't know if I'd watch it, but...
Oh, I would totally watch it, though, because just think of the weird hut stuff they would have on there.
Weird Hut Stuff. It's the name of my Max Rebo band cover band.
So, like, on the scale of the movies, I probably place this one ahead of the prequels, like the traditional prequels, even though this is technically a prequel as well.
I would absolutely put like this movie, as much as I have griped about it, is still a better movie than any of the prequels.
So I think my sequence is probably still Empire, and then kind of A New Hope and Force Awakens are kind of tied for me. And then Jedi, and then Rogue One, and then the prequels in reverse order. Because like, I think Revenge of the Sith is the most watchable of the prequels.
I know people really dislike Revenge of the Sith. I think it is a perfectly fine movie. I think that it's no sillier than Jedi.
I think it is a lot less awful than the other two prequels.
Yeah.
But that is about all I can say. It has some decent parts to it, but the end of it is so terrible that I kind of like black out about any of the other stuff that might have been okay.
But it has like the first half of Revenge of the Sith is really good. Like the opening of Revenge of the Sith with that really cool space battle, and you just kind of slowly go into it.
It does have one of the best opening shots.
It's got incredible opening shots.
And opening themes.
It's got a bunch of really good stuff.
I mean, I'm constantly reminded, well, not constantly because I try to avoid watching it, but I am often reminded that, like, Phantom Menace had a really strong opening. Like, if the whole movie had been as good as the, like, opening few scenes, like, that would have been a really amazing movie. It started out really strong, and then
it really goes to shit when you
questionable
downhill.
Like, the premise is a little questionable even when they're on the ship.
Well,
We're going
yeah.
to kill our Jedi with gas. That's gonna work, surely.
I mean, they're not the brightest things, but like
The Nemoidians in general are cartoon villains at best.
yeah.
But like I've said this many times before, is between the 3 90s era prequels, there's one really good movie.
You could probably make 2 half decent movies.
Yeah, there's one really good one or 2 okay ones. I feel like episode 1 kind of basically from. I'm trying to think if there's anything redeemable in Clone Wars. Like the
Yoda's fight scene is in Clone Wars, so yes.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in Clone Wars actually. Like I like some of the fight scenes, like and some of the battle stuff in Clone Wars, but that's it. Like the so-called character developments can all just go away.
I think that like the big problem with the prequel trilogy is they made it about Anakin. In reality, it should have been about Obi-Wan. Like, we should have followed Obi-Wan. Yeah. And this was his story arc.
And little hints of this deteriorating thing.
Right. But, like, had we followed Obi-Wan, who is the hero of that story, like we followed Luke, who's the hero of the original trilogy, it would have felt better. Because, like, you go into the prequels knowing, okay, now we're supposed to root for this person that's going to become the galaxy's ultimate evil?
Yeah. Anakin is handled way better in the Clone Wars show. For as uneven as the first couple of seasons are in that show, it gets very, very good and does a whole lot of legwork in character development for Anakin.
I feel like the point at which George Lucas checked out of the Clone Wars series is the point at which it started to get really good because they maybe weren't under as close supervision. I mean, I loved Rogue One for a lot of reasons, but I don't think I'm going to go to the theater and see it a second time. I will just wait for digital because, to some extent, had I known how fast the turnaround would have been for theater to digital, I maybe wouldn't have gone multiple times for Force Awakens. Because it came out in December, and by April we had a digital copy that we could buy.
I was still super happy to go see Force Awakens multiple times in the theater.
Same. But I also went with different groups of people every time.
Honestly, like, Force Awakens is this magical thing for me because, like, my wife wasn't anti-Star Wars. She got that I liked Star Wars, but she didn't get why. And while she universally thought the prequels were crap, she liked the original trilogy, like, once she rewatched it in preparation for Force Awakens. And she really liked Force Awakens. And, like, when I came up with this mad idea of doing 2 movies this morning, she was on board with it, because, like, she literally wanted to see both of them. I thought I was essentially getting her signing on board, because she also wanted to go see the Harry Potter film. But no, she was actually really excited to go see Rogue One. So, yeah, I'm super happy to have a spouse that at least on a better level gets my enjoyment of these films.
Yeah, I mean, I have a spouse who is also a giant nerd, and I can't imagine having a spouse that didn't like Star Wars. But I get that luxury because the odds are in my favor.
Well, like, she had never seen the movies in any form until they were re-released in special edition in the theaters. Because, like, I went to all of those when I was in college and drugged her along with me, and, like, she'd never seen them. So I guess there's, like, an entire cultural touchstone that she didn't have. And truth be told, like, there's a lot of the core 80s geeky movies that she had never seen until I showed them to her. Like, I don't think she'd ever seen Back to the Future, for example. So I think it would be hard to go around and do a thumbs up, thumbs down, because we have some sort of nuanced feelings here.
I mean, I would totally overall still probably give this movie a thumbs up. Like, it was a good movie, just was not quite for me. And I would still, like, I'd still highly recommend people go see it, like, because just because it wasn't quite my thing doesn't mean it wasn't good, or that other people probably wouldn't really like it.
I'm really excited about a Star Wars movie where the reactions aren't binary, I guess. Like, Force Awakens, people either loved it or hated it. and it's kind of I really like that Rogue One has like a more nuanced spectrum. I'm really excited about that.
Well, I feel like Rogue One also benefits from being the second movie where we've seen that maybe we're going to see a slightly different Star Wars than we're used to. Because, like, even though even though Force Awakens definitely followed the formula of A New Hope, it had some very different things going on.
I guess. I mean, it had more than one female character, I guess. Two, sorry. But I feel like Force Awakens was a reminder of, yes, we can still make the Star Wars movies that you used to love. And Rogue One is, we can also make Star Wars movies that are new and very different. I like both of those things.
Yeah. Well, considering we're reaching the point where we've, quote-unquote, been recording a long time, any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
I can't wait to see the next one.
Yes.
Yup.
I can't wait for someone to start making Star Wars video games again.
It's also...
Star Wars video game. It was just Battlefront.
I can't wait for someone to start making Star Wars
EA start making Star Wars video games again?
No. Star Wars video games, not video games with a Star Wars skin.
That might take a while. Like,
Sure.
Maybe when their license runs out.
Look, video games take a long time to make. I'm okay with this.
It has definitely increased my desire to hop back into SWTOR over Christmas break and play some more of that, which is exactly the reaction I had after Force Awakens.
I'm going to try to do
Yeah,
that.
that's the thing that happened.
I'm going to try to do that, but man, there's a lot of buttons in that game.
Yeah.
I thought Final Fantasy XIV had button bloat.
Wow, that's not a good sound. I do think Final Fantasy XIV has button bloat.
Yeah.
So the thing that like was hard going back to it is like my Jedi Guardian is basically a Wrath era WoW warrior with all of the buttons that I had back then, and I did not realize how much has been pared down since then.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. Like I knew there was a big paring down with Legion and with Warlords each time, but I just didn't realize how much is gone from my bar that used to be there.
I think part of Stormblood is already talking about that. KOTOR just seems to have missed the memo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Well, anyway, hopefully we gave plenty of spoiler warning, and that you're not now at this point realizing, oh crap, I listened
this far. It's your own.
I'm
fault.
Yeah, it's your own fault. But I am kind of
now. I'm mad too. If you're mad,
I'm kind of curious if like anybody does stop listening and then picking back up later. Because like I definitely am curious to hear thoughts from people on what we said and what their own thoughts were about Rogue One. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week potentially. We got to sort that shit out.
Later.
definitely not next week.
Definitely not
What?
next week.
Yeah, like no, we got to sort out when we do the next one. But whatever,
We'll figure it out.
it'll happen. There'll be another show. Anyway, good night.
Good
See
night.
ya.